and welcome to this week's weekly water cooler conversation. This week we'll be talking about Falcon Winter Soldier Episode 2. If this is the first time you have watched this show, I'll be diving into full spoilers about Falcon Winter Soldier. We had a really good time doing this for the WandaVision run. WandaVision was much more of a mystery, so it was a lot more of dissecting what things might be. Falcon Winter Soldier is a bit more linear. That said, a lot of the stuff I talked about last week happened a lot earlier. We'll get into that. And then I also think as much as we can cover other things, I want you guys to comment on this video. After it's live, after it's posted, leave a comment and let me know the shape of how you want things to go, because I like diving into the full live, but I also want to make sure it's not just like a news brief. I want to be diving deep into the stuff. It's the deep conversations I want to really cover. I trust that you have seen episode 2. Not much I can spoil, but if you want the enjoyment of the show, get out of here now. 3, 2, 1. Okay, Falcon Winter Soldier episode 2 is quite the experience. I'm personally a little worried about the state of pop culture when people were complaining that episode 1 started off slowly. Episode 1 was an action spectacle on television with a budget the likes of which I haven't seen before, but also took the time to really invest in the characters enough, whether that was the therapy sequences, whether that was the sequences with the boat and the Wilson family. All of those things are essential, and I was really shocked to see that so many outlets described that as a slog, starting off on the wrong foot. A lot of very negative pacing reviews, which blew my mind because I thought that first episode moved at an incredible clip. I say all that because I think this episode might have moved too quickly. They set up so many things in this episode. I really am enjoying the show, but 6 hours suddenly feels like I wish it was 7 or 8 if this is the speed it needs to go at. This episode featured Asaya Bradley, Elijah Bradley, the beginning of the Baron Zemo conflict, Flag Smasher reveals, and lots of building at that. Lots of Captain America, the new imposter to us, Captain America, John Walker. The continued exploits of obviously our 2 lead characters. Them coming together very suddenly at the top of the episode. This episode had to do so much, and I do worry that I personally, Coy, my experience, yours may differ, enjoy the pacing of episode 1 more than episode 2. I liked that we had both character development and growth as well as insane action set pieces, because to me that feels more like a comic. If every single comic and every single panel is throwing a punch or a kick and throwing out exposition dialogue, you go crazy very quickly. You need the character building to really happen. You need the world building to really happen to be very invested. So I loved this episode. I think it's as good as the last episode, short of the pacing. The pacing was a bit much for me. I do worry there'll be some burnout if this is how all 6 episodes go. And these are just my slight concerns. I gave the last episode, if I were to rate things, I gave the last episode an A-, whereas this is a B+. We're talking semantics. We're talking fractions of the total score. Just the pacing issues really affected my experience because everything I thought was going to happen episodes 3 and 4, per our last conversation last week, already happened in episode 2. In watching the credits, I saw Asaya Bradley and I was like, oh, that's going to be a thing as we build. I thought we'd have this whole episode be the 2 characters separate. They'd come together in the 3rd act. They came together in the beginning of the 1st act here. I talked about the Power Broker and how I thought the Power Broker might get the first mention in episode 3. Power Broker's already been mentioned in this episode. We had the reveal that Carly is the Flag Smasher, or all but revealed that she's the leader. She had the most command and screen time, for lack of a better expression, in this episode. So a lot of the things I really expect to be a slow burn have been an immediate burn. The show is napalm. It's already on fire. Granted, it is a buddy cop show. A buddy cop situation is going to be a lot faster. It's going to be a lot more turned up heat. But I do think that the show could slow down a bit. Hopefully the next episode takes its time with Zemo. Hopefully the next episode gives us some more backstory with Asaya Bradley. Hopefully the next episode gives us a bit more time with these characters. Because all the moments that I really enjoyed in this show are the ones that are a little bit more living in the moment. But I do think this show is doing a great job balancing comic book references, action beats, very tricky to deliver dialogue, a lot of characters, a lot of moving parts, a lot of world building that doesn't feel like it's setting up too much outside of itself. We need the MCU to flow, we need the MCU to grow, but we also need to really care about this show without thinking in the next thing, and the next thing, and phase 5, and the next movie. So I think this is doing that very well, especially considering how much it has to juggle. 2 scenes to somewhat endear us to the new Cap is very impressive. We opened the show with John Walker this time, and that in itself is a very tricky thing to do in a show called Falcon and Winter Soldier. He's effectively the villain alongside Zemo. He's just not fully there yet. He's a bit of a douche, but he's not fully a douche. I said last week he's got the most punchable face of all time, and that is not a disrespect to the great Wyatt Russell. It is merely saying that with that mask on, you'll want to punch that jaw. So they cast very well. They gave us 2 scenes in this episode to really endear us to him enough to have it be interesting. You've got your Killmongers, and you got your Wilson Fisks, and you've got all these incredible villains that you care about now. The bar is really high in the MCU for villains, to be honest. There was a villain problem at one point in the MCU, but there is not now, not currently. I'd say more than half the villains are good, and I'd say in the top third are great or exceptional. Killmonger is going to have a lot more in common with Flag Smasher and all these things, and that is a genius villain in the MCU. So we're really going to see how that goes. I love that they had the game take place in the hometown of the character. The whole football stadium is the hometown of John Walker, which was a lot of fun. I also love that Good Morning America gives us that really cheesy line, Good Morning America, but it's also an ABC affiliate, which is Disney now, which is a great use of Disney powers to make it feel like our world, but also be canon in that world, which was just fun. Memories of wartime to unite the country post-blip is really haunting. It's a really great way to bring the country together. It's what we do as a country. But in 2021, that's an interesting look at how we take care of this country. They're using a piece of propaganda. They're using Captain America in the first Avenger pre-fight way, where he's just a symbol. He's selling war bonds. He's uniting the country in his symbology. And they're doing that again post-blip. And that's going to be really interesting in the world we live in, with things so divided, with things so cantankerous, with things so full of animosity. And now we've got this figure in this show that's going to cause more division. That's going to be very tricky. And then you got the Flag Smashers, who one world, one tribe, one family, one. They want one thing. I love that. I think that's fantastic, because that's a more ideal world. So the villains stealing medical supplies and stealing vaccines, what's more topical than that, and giving us hope because of how the world was in the blip. They don't want nationalism back. They don't want a corrupt government back. So with Captain America working for a government that we're going to feel betrayed by, Captain America himself being a bit of a douche nozzle, all of that's going to make for a lot of really interesting geopolitical commentary, and they set that up really well in this episode. They set it up great in the first episode too, but they're really escalating that, and especially using him as a symbol to unite the country post-blip. I love that use. We got these guys together way faster than I expected. Did not expect to see them immediately 5 minutes into this episode. Spidey, buddy, I love you. Spidey is eating in 18 minutes, so he is letting me know that it's 18 minutes till lunchtime. Okay, so they got together way faster than expected. I love the quippy, fun buddy cop tone. There's definitely a mix more improv versus scripted dialogue here, which is not usually the Marvel way. There's plenty of improv in Marvel, especially the Iron Man films, but you can feel it a bit more here. So that's been an interesting tone adjustment for me with these characters. For example, there's not a lot of improv seemingly in the Winter Soldier film, which is the closest tone to this one so far. So it's an interesting balance with the big three in those conversations. I love buddy cop stuff, so I'm really enjoying it personally, but it's going to be interesting to see how that holds out for these 6 very action-packed episodes. They said White Wolf, and it made me so happy. We had the post-credit scene where they mentioned White Wolf. Now, in the comics, White Wolf is a completely different character, but in the MCU, White Wolf is Bucky. That's who he kind of became in Wakanda. They're joking about the stealth. They're joking about all those things. I'm really enjoying the fact that we get more Sebastian Stan as this character in his own time, in his own way, and I think it's fantastic. And I love this pensive, staring intensity of Bucky. I love his rage that's boiling under the surface. I love that he's got our MCU's Wolverine going on, because the Winter Soldier is a brainwashed, 100-year-old, war-torn veteran that has no loyalty, that has no place that feels like home, that sleeps on the floor, that lost his best friend. He'd be angry. He'd be dealing with all that. It'd be bubbling under the surface at all times. Him in therapy is perfect. All these things. He's a lot like Wolverine. In fact, I would argue this is the closest, we'll get to Wolverine for a little bit, because the X-Men aren't going to rush to him. So I'm really enjoying this type of character, this roguish Ronin character, and I loved hearing White Wolf. The mega fight turned into a 3-way fight. I expected the scene with Falcon and Bucky to happen in episode 3 with the 18-wheelers, but I expected it to be them winning, and I really like that they didn't, and I really like that it also brought in a new Captain America and Bucky. Now, he's called Bucky in the comics, but only for a little bit, and they quickly changed that for racial connotations in the comics. In this, he's called Battlestar, which is just as cheesy a name as Bucky feels like it is. He actually stops the team up because of the cheesiness of the name Battlestar, so I really enjoyed them being aware of that cheese, and I really liked them leaning into it, because they're propaganda tools. they're literally being used to like hurrah rah military, and I really like they're leaning all the way into that. So I love that this scene called that out immediately. I love the four of them not fighting well together. I love the lack of synchronization. I think we're gonna get some really incredible moments where it's Bucky and Falcon sharing the shield. I like that the three of them sharing the shield had a couple moments, but overall it wasn't good. It wasn't useful. They lost the fight. So that was all really interesting. Seeing John Walker practice with the shield was fun. I hate seeing someone else with it. I think I'm supposed to hate that. I've really enjoyed that scenario. That fight sequence was excellent. A lot more practical than you'd expect. A lot of very good CGI that you wouldn't realize is CGI. The CGI in the show is impressive because it feels like you're watching all practical, or 90% practical, and it's probably like 80. There's 10% sneaky CGI tucked in here. There's only 6 of these episodes. We're already a third of the way in because we've finished episode 2. The show's got to move, but honestly, I wish there was one more just because the show's pace this episode was like banana sandwich. Lamar Hoskins. Now, Lamar Hoskins is Power Broker's Bucky. In the comic books, Power Broker gave both this Cap and Lamar Hoskins their powers. Power Broker was also mentioned in the show. I assume he's the one texting. Could be Zemo somehow, could be someone else entirely. Power Broker is going to be very essential. He's mentioned by name in the credits of the show. I talked about last week how Power Broker is going to be one of the big bads. Power Broker is the one that gave Bucky and this Cap their powers. They don't seem to have powers yet. I'm wondering if that's going to be a thing as we go along. Do they get powers? Will they be super soldiered up? Some sort of Power Broker sequence. Very intrigued by Lamar Hoskins being in the show. John Walker is perfectly almost likable, but while also being a douchebag. He's that kid that you knew in high school that was popular, that you didn't know if would like help you feel cool or punch you in the face. He's that kid that was friends with everybody but friends with nobody, and I really love the casting. They gave him this great, almost Chris Evans Cap haircut. They gave him all the right pieces to be a bit of a propaganda tool, but the acting itself is this undercurrent of maliciousness. You can see where his overly militaristic nature might be problematic. You can see where he gets a bit fascist as the show goes along. I can see this character going that direction, and they're delivering that very, very well. This is why you don't just give a soldier a cap suit. Like, he lost that fight because he's just a dude. I loved the use of the shield to save his Bucky. That's a very smart move, but he's a soldier, no super soldier serum. He's a guy fighting these things. Again, it is a very interesting, different take, and it's been a lot of fun to watch so far. The Battlestar Stop the Car sequence I enjoyed so very much. Carly Morgenthau is revealed so quickly. The girl from Star Wars Solo is our villain, Flag Smasher. In the comic books, it's Carl. In the show, it's Carly. The redheaded girl with the cool freckles in the show is our villain, presumably, because she plays the singular Flag Smasher from the comic books. They've turned Flag Smasher into an entity in the show. They've turned it into a group, which I dig. I think that's really smart. I think it's a great tool to be juxtaposed with nationalism. But at the same time, revealing that she's the big bad, which they've all but done, was a lot faster than I expected. We will see how that pays out. Asaya already. Asaya Bradley is so important in the comic books. He was first introduced in 2003 based off real events where experiments were done to black soldiers, where this country's history of racism is more and more revealing for how we got to where we are, and black soldiers were often treated irrevocably horribly. This is a great example of that, and they did a great storyline in Marvel Comics where Asaya Bradley was a super soldier that never got any notice, and when he donned the Captain America visage, when he put on the suit, he was arrested for treason, put in prison. They lean into that in the show. They talk about how he never got the respect. He's never been regarded as a hero. And there's a great conversation with Falcon and Bucky. I said last week there's going to be a lot of conversations about the more subtle racism and the less subtle racism. The more subtle racism is Bucky being like, I was just trying to protect that guy. And Sam being like, I should have known there was a black Captain America. The less subtle racism was the next scene after, where a bunch of white cops come out and say, hey, is this guy bothering you? Do you have any ID? That's way less subtle racism. That's a real-ass problem in this country with fucking 12. It's a real issue. So I love that they went between those two extremes so immediately. And that sequence with Asaya Bradley is incredible. That sequence with Asaya Bradley, they cast perfectly. He's got like 4 minutes of screen time, and there's so much emotion and palpable rage and sadness and just so much going on there. And through that sequence, we got a brand new young Avenger. That's right, Elijah Bradley, the grandson of Asaya Bradley, is, of course, the Patriot. So we now have a slew of young Avengers. This Phase 4 Young Avengers sequence is just ramping up, and that kid had like 3 scenes, and he's going to be so essential very soon. We've got Cassie Lang in the Avengers movies. We've got, obviously, the kids from WandaVision who are probably coming back because of that final post-credit sequence. We've got the upcoming Kate Bishop in the... this episode, by the way, is with Cap. We've got the upcoming Kate Bishop with Hawkeye. We've got so many young Avengers, and now we've got the Patriot, and that means we're probably going to get Wiccan soon coming back because we've alluded to him. I love this scene. It might be my favorite scene of this episode. The acting was just so incredible. The dynamic between grandfather and grandson was so subtle, but there. The way Bucky sees it versus Falcon sees it. All of this stuff is beautiful groundwork for what's to come. And the character himself being so important to this story. They're telling a story about super soldiers, and super soldiers already exist. And here's one, and he's been through the worst, and his country betrayed him. His country put him in a position where he couldn't win. His country tortured him, and Hydra tortured him, and his country left him in prison. It's a painful, important story to tell, straight from the comic books. They turned it a little bit more from World War II to the Korean War, which is better for timeline stuff for the MCU, and I love that the MCU just does little tweaks. The MCU just modifies slightly so it fits their chronology, but it doesn't betray the original story, and that is such a great, great use of MCU-izing characters. Thank you to Asaya Bradley for being this important of a character, and thank you, holy crap, Carl Lumbly for nailing that performance. I was so happy with that because that character is way too important, and they did so much in 4 minutes. I hope we get more Asaya Bradley, but I don't know with the way the show's going, the speed. Captain Douche! Captain Douche coming in and being like, I got you guys out of prison, now you're gonna help me out. And there's like his powers of Captain America pose where he's just douche face. Loved that. That's something Steve Rogers wouldn't do in that way. Steve Rogers went nomad and took people out of prison and didn't wear the flag. He didn't feel like the flag should be someone breaking people out of prison. He went nomad, whereas Captain Douche goes in and he's just like, yeah, I'm going to use my executive privilege. I love that. I really enjoy the fact that this Cap is acting like this and our Cap acted like this. Again, it's abuse of power. It's how you see power. It's how you see yourself. It's how America sees itself, depending on who's in office. These are conversations that are worth having. This is the difference between a democracy and fascism. This is the difference between the way we accept our government and actually getting out and voting for the government we should have. All handled with superheroes. Thank you, MCU. Thank you, Marvel. Thank you, writers. Thank you, actors. Thank you, everyone that is making the show so many layers. It's a buddy cop show, it's an action show, it's a Marvel show, but it's also our fucking problems as a country, and I appreciate it. All in these quick scenes. Couples therapy sequence, fantastic, necessary, so much fun. We got a lot of it in the previews, arguably too much. I would have loved to have saved some of that. It was really great to see. It was great marketing. It got me excited for the show. I just wish there was a little more so we didn't see all of it before we saw it, but some great stuff. The big reveal in it wasn't revealed in marketing, and that was the actual reason Falcon bothers Bucky so much is it invalidates him. If Steve was wrong about Falcon, maybe Steve was wrong about Bucky, and Bucky puts most of his self-worth, if not all of his self-worth, on Steve Rogers' opinion of his self-worth. So that was such a heartbreaking scene to see Sebastian Stan just break, because I'm not anything without what Steve thinks of me, and Steve's gone, so if you suck, I suck. And that was just beautiful and great therapizing and a great moment of epiphany for a character and for an actor and for a show. Thank you again for the tight writing that allows for those moments, and I really think that was very important. Also, Falcon gets a bunch of moments of, hey, this isn't how things are going to go. The glaring, staring turns into a funny joke, because that's what they've been talking about doing this whole episode. There's so much little like subtleties in this, but I really think that line is the most revealing Bucky line we've had since Winter Soldier. That was such a moment. That was some plums detail. In Winter Soldier, Bucky is working and getting his memory back, and when you see him shopping, he's buying plums, and plums are good for your memory. And I've always loved that detail. When he's shopping, he's buying plums. This is a big moment of reveal. A little less subtle than plums, but very important. The Zemo reveal, it's just his face. We just get him. But who's he playing chess with? Who's mighty enough to play chess with Zemo? Why do all Marvel villains play chess? It's not Magneto. Is it Doom? No, it's not Doom. But who is he playing chess with? That sequence was a lot of fun to just tease. I'm just shocked we got Zemo so quickly. Give me that mask. He's going to break out. It's going to be crazy. Is he going to say those words? Is Bucky going to somehow get manipulated? Find out next week. In the credits, we haven't really seen the Broken Shield yet. Since last week, all the things from the credits I noticed were in this week. Broken Shield, Uncle Sam, Howling Commandos, and Monkey are my theories for what comes next week by dissecting the credits. Those are the things we haven't really seen alluded to yet. Obviously, there's a bunch of propaganda. There's a bunch of different uses. I think the Monkey is going to be important, whether that's the Power Broker, the High Evolutionary, something. I think there's going to be something. Maybe the monkey is a symbol for the Flag Smashers in some way. I don't know. Monkey. Howling Commandos, I'm curious how they come to play. Is there a different set of Howling Commandos with John Walker? Do the OG Howling Commandos come to play for something important? I think they're going to be important in the next 2 episodes. Uncle Sam, beyond Sam Wilson, I think Uncle Sam is going to have something not to say, but there's going to be something with Uncle Sam, the concept, as well as Sam Wilson reflecting that concept, and then of course the broken shield. There's going to be something about the shield. I think it's going to get literally broken or metaphorically broken with the passing of the torch and them having to steal it. What it represents when you steal a flag, what it represents when you steal a symbol, all of those things are going to come to play, and maybe what that broken symbol represents is that. So those are the things I'm wondering. I love that the show could go Wakanda with the Flag Smashers presenting solid geopolitical ideals. They're stealing vaccines and medicine. They're trying to help refugees. They're doing things that we could do. And they're doing it for theoretically the right reasons while doing it in the wrong ways. They're violent, they're super soldiers, but then at the same time, like, who's to say what's right and wrong when you're helping people? So I love that concept, and that's kind of what we had with Killmonger. Killmonger was the villain, and he just had American ideals. He just wanted to smash and show people through strength what was right, take over, and Wakanda didn't know how to handle that. And a lot of ways, T'Challa took on some of Killmonger's ideas. Are we going to see any of that with this show? We're going to see the good guys take on any of the Flag Smashers' ideals. There's a lot of really interesting nuance in what the Flag Smashers want. Every review I read referred to Ep 1 as rough or shaky start, complaining that the loans and therapy were not able to move them forward, and that is why we can't have nice things. Stop complaining about pacing in a show that's already moving too quickly. Everything cannot be an Avengers level event, or nothing is an Avengers level event. It is essential to give a shit about characters. Everyone that said the first episode was slow needs to watch anything that's a cinema piece of art. Like, watch a movie. Those reviewers, you're wrong. You're just wrong. I got so angry time and time again. The line with the wingman in the back of the truck when the new Cap refers to him as Cap's wingman, clearly very offensive. And also from the comic books, there is a line in the comic books where Falcon says, I'm not going to be ... and the Falcon. I will not be and the Falcon. I'm my own man. And that eventually leads him to take up the Cap mantle. I think that line was the line equivalent from the comic books that just inspires Sam to be his own man and be his own Cap, and I think that line's going to be very essential for the next and the fourth episode of the show. He's not ... and the Falcon. He's not a wingman. And the pun is funny, but he's not a sidekick, and I love that, and I love that they put it right in the show. And I also love, and my managers are probably in this watching the show, and this one's for Dave Ruddy. Did you notice the prison cell? It was Zell. And then the numbers are Princess Leia's prison cell. So Princess Leia's prison cell reflected in Zemo's prison cell because Kevin Feige loves Star Wars and this is a Disney show, so those numbers correspond to Princess Leia's cell, which I thought was very clever and fun. I also liked the Black Falcon scene, that conversation. I thought that was really important. Marvel has worked on that, and the MCU's really worked on that. Black Goliath is now just Goliath. Black Panther is obviously Black Panther because that's the full character, but he's not Black Falcon, and that's a very important conversation, so I really enjoyed those little details, so thought that was cool. So those are my thoughts on Falcon and Winter Soldier. This show is really working for me. I've seen some complaints. I've seen some people didn't like episode 1, did like episode 2, and vice versa. I liked them both. I just wanted to slow down a little bit. Today's weekly water cooler conversation is with the great Cappy behind me. This is an Oscar in the form of Captain America, so I wanted to show you guys this. The Noble Cappy, one of my favorite awards. My buddy gave me this after 3 years of doing Marvel movie news. He said, I have earned a Cappy as a journalist, and I was very honored because look at that thing glow. Look at it glow. Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's weekly water cooler conversation. So please follow me on Twitter, on Instagram. You probably do because you're fucking here, right? On TikTok, which I just started, and that's cool because I do little like graphics and I can do more editing and I can actually shape my thoughts and you can actually get some comic book covers while I go along. And do subscribe to The Late Con with Coy Jandreau because that's what this is all building towards. That's where things are going to be landing. Hit subscribe, hit the little bell, and all the things that other YouTubers tell you to do. I love you guys very, very much. Thank you for being here. It's one of my favorite parts of the week. Every week, I look forward to my Friday mornings with you lovelies. I will see you next week and probably earlier on the other internets. Stay safe, stay sane. Thank you for being here, and thank you as always to comic books for existing.